Hey friends and neighbors, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and I'm going to participate in Michael's contest. Michael is Poetry on Plastic, that is his channel name, and he's just surpassed 10,000 subscribers, so he'd like to have a contest to commemorate that accomplishment. Congratulations on that, Michael. If you're not familiar with Michael's channel, I'll put a link there so you can subscribe. Michael is a really interesting person. He's an audiophile. He's a just general music lover. He's really into equipment. He does some writing for audiophile publications as well. And I know Michael mostly from live streams that he participates in. And here's the greatest compliment I can give Michael based on my interactions with him and observing him on live streams. Myself included, most of us, myself included, the longer we talk, the more it becomes obvious that we're full of shit. Pardon my French. Michael is the opposite. You look at Michael and you listen to him start talking, you say, oh, this is some kid, you know, what's he know? The more he talks, the more he makes sense. The more weight his argument on a particular subject carries. And I can't think of a more complimentary thing to say about someone who puts their opinions out there like we all do in the vinyl community. He really makes sense the more he talks. He is able to establish an argument with concrete points that can, on more than one occasion, has caused me to pause and reconsider my own position and ultimately sometimes agree with him, even though I might not have agreed to begin with. So, subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. First of all, what are we listening to? From the Blue Note Classic series, the recent issue of Adam's Apple from Wayne Shorter. If you haven't watched my little parody video, my Blue Note Scandal parody video, I'll put a plug in for that. It is about this album. Please pull it up and watch it for a laugh. It is total parody. It is not intended to be taken seriously at all. It's called Blue Note Scandal. Okay. All right. So Michael has come up with 6 prompts for us to address to enter his contest. And the first one is to show a classical album. Now, Michael is a classical musician. He plays in orchestra in the Southwest. I can't remember if it may be in Texas. He may be located in Austin, but I'm not positive on that. Something makes me want to say it's Arizona, but I'm not positive. But anyway, he's in a classical orchestra. Okay, this is a record I'll show you for classical. Is a 2021 release. I won't try to say all the title here, but it's Hilary Hahn, Paris. And now the significance of this album, or this artist more, I should say, this artist more than album. Hilary Hahn, my daughter is a violinist. She doesn't play much anymore. She's got a newborn baby and everything, but she grew up playing the violin, piano and violin, and got really good in playing the violin. And when she was in high school, we drove into Raleigh to the North Carolina Symphony, where the guest artist was Hilary Hahn. And we got to take in a Sunday afternoon of classical music with Hilary Hahn, and thoroughly enjoyable. This is actually a 45 RPM album, and I'm not real fond of 45 RPMs, mainly because I don't want to have to get up and change the record constantly. But this is very very entertaining album. I don't have a lot of classical, but I do enjoy classical. Okay, and the next one is the heaviest sounding album we've got. Well, I don't listen to heavy metal or black metal or anything with metal in it at all. I don't think I've got a single heavy metal album. Chester keeps picking up Rilla the gorilla and wanting to gnaw on her. You leave Rilla alone. Okay, but this is a heavy album. This is Government Mule, Heavy Load Blues. And this is an album that, so there's vintage audio equipment there for you to take a gander at and look at all that stuff in there. Of course, Warren Haynes, probably the most well-known member of Government Mule. This is his band. And this is a 2021 release, I believe. Bought it from their website. I like the artwork there. And this is a very heavy, thick sounding album to me. Electric blues, some of which Warren Haynes wrote, some of which are blues classics. And let's see if there's anything about the vinyl. Let's see, this microphone, cassette, microphone, that sort of thing. People would always talk, and I didn't know enough about electric guitars. People would always talk about, they'd say, oh, he's playing a Fender, or he's playing a Gibson, a Les Paul or something. And I really was, how do you know that? But as I got more into it and started learning a little bit about what type of electric guitars different people played, then I started understanding a little more about that. And I got where I think pretty much now I can tell when I'm listening to somebody playing a Fender and somebody playing a Les Paul. I think these were done with Les Pauls. A thicker, almost muddy sound, not in a bad way though. They recorded this album, they were doing 2 albums, Government Mule was doing 2 albums at one time. They were working on their normal rock album, you know, during the day. And then after they'd worked on that for hours, they would go back in. They had a studio, two studio rooms. They had one studio room where they were set up for, hey Chester, where they were set up for the album that they, I want to say traditional, that'll throw you off if I say that, but their normal Government Mule album. And they had another room in the studio set up with all vintage equipment. And at night, late at night, they would get in there and they worked on this album. And you can tell it's heavy, it's thick, it's you know, just it's that blues like that, not the happy-go-lucky acoustic blues, but the well, I shouldn't say happy-go-lucky blues, but you know what I mean, the more acoustic sound, but that real gritty, grindy, you know, growl you get. And that's what this album gives you. All right. So the next thing he wanted us to do was when record collecting became a hobby, after it became a hobby, show something that you wouldn't have really been aware of or picked up or had interest in had you had not been a serious vinyl collector. And so being a serious vinyl collector, I've always been a record collector since I was, you know, early teens. So we're going back 40, 50 years. We're going back basically 50 years for me. But when I got more, the second wave, I guess, when my daughter was growing up, she'd grown up, and I had more time to look into deeper into music and things like that. I think it's kind of normal. You start listening to things like classical and jazz music, where maybe you didn't in your, when you were a middle-aged person or younger. And because of the vinyl community here, I got beyond the superficial jazz and got into a little deeper dive into jazz, definitely because of the vinyl community more than anything else. And so just, I mean, not talking about obscure stuff or being any kind of expert, definitely not that, but just things like starting to pick up, I can't afford the tone poets, but starting to pick up the Blue Note Vinyl Classic series albums and stuff like that, and oftentimes picking them up secondhand as so many collectors churn through their collection, or there becomes a newer version, a newer pressing, new remaster, and some of these records come up. So just an example, Soul Station, Hank Mobley. It's got Art Blakey on the drums, Wynton Kelly on piano, and Paul Chambers on the bass. I wouldn't have known, I might have recognized the name, but I wouldn't have known anything about Hank Mobley, if I hadn't been a part of the vinyl community, which is a part of my record collecting. So all these Blue Note records, and then looking for stuff on Verb and Riverside and things like that, in addition to the obvious, Blue Note. And what's another label? Is it Pueblo? Yeah, Pueblo. I picked up several from that. Okay, and then a foreign or non-English recording. This is a recording. It was actually pressed, came out in 1988 on Harlequin Records, and it's called Cubans in Paris, 1930 to 1938. Okay, and it was pressed in England. All the song credits are in French. French. But over here, it tells the story in English of these recordings. But they're interesting recordings. Is exactly what it says it is. A lot of Paris musicians recording, living in Paris, France. And these are recordings from the 1930s. Okay. And number 5 is a CD or a tape that has never been made into a vinyl recording that you'd like to see made into vinyl. There's a record label, a guy that did historical, I guess as much historical preservation as anything else, just down the road from me actually, called Old Hat Enterprises. I have no idea who the guy is. I've gone to his website and there's a lot of great information there. And I've got they've only pressed one vinyl record. I would love to see Old Hat Records or Old Hat Enterprises take what they're putting out as CDs and put them on vinyl. I would love to that. Only thing I've got is Fiddle Noir, which is a collection of African American violinists from the 1920s and 30s. Love that one. But this is a CD. I'd love to see this in particular and anything they've got in their catalog pressed to vinyl. Music from the Lost Provinces, and it's old-time string bands from Ashe County, North Carolina and vicinity, 1927 to 1931. And they called that area of the mountains of North Carolina the Lost Provinces, Ashe County and around there, because they were very isolated until interstate highways started being built and things like that in the 60s and 70s. But this is a collection like Grayson and Witter are on here, Frank Blevins and his Tar Heel Rattlers, Jack Reedy and his Walker Mountain String Band, and it's got songs on here like My Name is Ticklish Reuben, and Governor Al Smith for President, The Fatal Courtship, Chasing Old Satan Through the Door. So there's such a tradition in that part of North Carolina that music is still being played by some people in that region. So I would love to see Old Hat Enterprises press their catalog in vinyl. So I believe that wraps it up. I believe, oh no, number 6, a letter to the editors, a comment about, or some comments about some things that Michael has done. Most of my experience with Michael is on the live streams. So I went back and I tried to think of some topics that had been discussed that he participated in. But then I went back and looked at a few of his older videos, and he's got some stuff from 4.5 years ago. And he did a collection update, and I'll comment on some things, some light criticism, I guess you'd say, of some records he showed. Michael showed a number of records, some of which were classic folk and rock albums. For instance, a couple of the very early Bob Dylan albums that had been made on MoFi, and I think it was Bayou Country and was it Green River, I believe, the Creedence Clearwater Revival albums that were done on Analog Productions, I believe. My criticism would be in the need for anyone to purchase $50 or $100 records of music in those types of music. Bob Dylan mainly singing, playing harmonica and guitar. You can get those Bob Dylan albums for not a lot of money that are converted to MoFi, and I'm assuming cost $50 and more now, and probably a lot more in the secondary market if they've sold all the things they put out. I don't see the benefit of that superior production that you would, and pressings that you would get for something like that, or something like just good old, swampy rock music from Creedence Clearwater Revival. I'm just not, that kind of music is just, to me, it's just not even meant for that. I understand the audiophile, quest for the best sounding, and the ability, I admire the ability to distinguish, the most minute details in a recording. And I don't question that, but I think it's just certain types of recordings that are benefited from something like that, and other types that aren't. And I don't think the examples of the records you bought really necessitate having MoFi. I'm thinking MoFi is much more desirable in classical recordings and in jazz recordings, where much more minute details can be drawn out. How many minute details, and is there a cost to benefit ratio that makes it worthwhile to be able to hear any minute details of Bob Dylan's harmonica playing and guitar playing? That when he takes his breath before he starts blowing into the harmonica, I mean, you'll be able to hear that a little bit more or something, I don't know. And the same thing with that swampy rock music. I mean, I think of those types of music as the type of music to be taken as a whole and not dissected down. So there's my, not really a criticism, just an observation on my part. And Michael, I'd love to hear you tell me, where, if I'm wrong on that, or maybe you'd somewhat agree with me. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you had to say. Anyway, those are my 6 prompts for Michael Poetry on Plastics 10,000 plus subscribers contest. I'll put a link below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like, and that's about all I've got to say about that. But I just have to remind you of one more thing. Always remember, when you're going out there in this world, folks, to be kind to your neighbors, because we're all neighbors. Take care.